Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It gives me immense pleasure to announce the launch of the Suave Critic Interviews, where I'll approach film critics and indie filmmakers whose visions inspire our mission. For this interview, I got to connect with a critic who has received the National Film Award for Best Film Critic and the Mumbai Press Club Award for Best Lifestyle and Entertainment Story. He has written for several publications from The Caravan to The Wire to GQ, and he keeps shedding light on some brilliant narratives in cinema from India and the world without compromising with his voice as a film critic. This interview by the Suave Critic is with renowned critic Tanul Thakur. So, hi and welcome to this interview. I'm really glad. I wouldn't say this very often, but I bless God bless Twitter because we got to connect. So, I'll be dividing this interview into chapters. The first chapter we'll be covering your origins as a critic, where you've come from. So while doing some research, I realized that you was pursuing engineering in America, and ultimately you started your journey as an editor for a blog called Passion for Cinema. So how exactly did your viewing experience of movies evolve?
I mean, it was pretty standard for the most part. I think I started watching different kinds of films right from the first semester itself. I mean, it was the fairly basic standard Hollywood stuff, which began with Martin Scorsese's films, Quentin Tarantino's, David Fincher, and the likes, and then somewhere around, I think, the end of second year, somewhere in the third year, I joined this blog called Passion for Cinema, where a lot of people from different parts of the world, some even related to the industry, had begun to blog. This was around 2008, late 2000s, 2000, late of 2008 or beginning of 2009. There was a real sort of a spirit of revolution in the air. I mean, there were these chats about alternate Bollywood, a new Bollywood, sort of like, really dominating people's imagination. There were all kinds of filmmakers coming: Vishal Bhardwaj, Dibakar Banerjee, Sriram Raghavan, Anurag Kashyap. Everybody, it just seemed like a very interesting moment to be in with respect to, I mean, an Indian cinephile. And that's where I sort of landed myself. I was going through some intense, hectic engineering workload during the daytime, but like whenever I would get chance, I would blog about films. I would talk to fellow cinephiles and things like that. That was the first time I really found a community of people like me, and that was beautiful because I've been watching cinema since as long as I can remember. I mean, 5, 6, 7 years old, and I used to be a regular goer to a theater or a single screen this thing since I was, what, I think 10 or 11. I've just been watching every film in theaters, every Bollywood film. You name me films from 93 onwards, there's a good chance I watched it in theater. Anyway, so so when I joined this blog, I had this. I mean, I had two conceptions. That A, I am a huge cinephile. That I really am interested, passionate, mad, whatever about cinema. And B, I've seen a lot of films. So these two conceptions I had about myself and sort of my journey till now. I was, I think, probably, I mean, your age, I was probably 20 or something, 2021. Those two preconceptions about myself shattered really quickly once I saw others who were on the website. These are the kinds of people who had really seen cinema. I mean, this sort of democratic sense, this really universal feel of what a good film is. So from there, I started to watch different kinds of film. I till then you had a fairly standard understanding of what cinema itself is, not just Bollywood cinema, but also different kinds of Hollywood cinema. You almost have a template of sorts that, okay, this is a film, this is a 3-act structure, these are the cuts, this is how scenes are lit, things like that. I mean, I'm pretty sure I did not even have a conscious vocabulary for that then, but you imbibe. I mean, filmmaking, film watching is also such a subconscious process as well, right? But then I started to discover all kinds of films. I mean, European, Iranian cinema, Japanese cinema, of course, South Korean cinema, and my mind started to blow. And then I started to read about these filmmakers, and then I discovered film critics. Then I discovered Roger Ebert. Then I discovered different film critics as well from around the world, and then I think just one thing leads to another, right? I mean, cinema is just such a beautiful road trip where pit stops are numerous, and they are just incredible. So I think that's how it sort of began. It really started to take off from 2008, 2009, and there were just a few filmmakers to whom I'm really grateful to, because I really got to understand that, okay, this is also cinema can be. It was a very, very, I mean, not just enlightening, but also very liberating process. So that was that, I would say.
Right. So you even started acquainting yourself, like traveling in your head in terms of cultures and how cinema operated around the world.
Absolutely.
Yeah, right. Awesome. So, as an extension to that question, can you tell us about a movie that you watched when you were a child and upon rewatching as a critic, your viewing dramatically changed?
I mean, I so the thing is, such overlaps haven't happened a lot,
Okay.
because I mean, the films that I saw as a kid, I have seldom revisited them. I mean, it has just so been the case. But there's definitely one film that I can pinpoint to, because I was sort of, for one reason or the other, I was thinking about it a few years ago and all of that. I happened to watch it again as well, and that would definitely be Mohabbatein. I mean, it was. Uh, it's also funny because that just says so much about my childhood, and that just also says so much about a certain kind of India, a certain kind of Bollywood, and a certain kind of intersection between these two very different worlds. So when I was saying that I grew up watching films in theaters and all of that, a lot of times by myself, most of them were Hindi films, if not all. And I grew up in Dhanbad, and we had these few single screen theaters, and I would sort of just frequently go to watch any film that had released. Hollywood films had really not come then so much, and things like CDs and, I mean, internet and all of that, they were still coming into their own. I'm describing a period which stretches from the mid 90s to the early aughts. So
Uh-huh.
there was still a lot of Hindi cinema that I grew up with, and in fact, that's the part of my identity that, as a cinephile, I really connect with a lot, because that's what I mean. All the joys, all the memories, all the annoyances, most of them lie, and I mean, you really don't forget your, I don't know, your first love in a sense. Anyway, so now I'm this kid who's growing up in the late 90s of India, a recently post-liberalized country where consumerism is sort of slowly starting to become, I mean, aspirational. It has already become aspirational. You have these dream merchants, so to speak, like people like, say, Karan Johar or Yash Chopra's or Aditya Chopra's, and these other filmmakers who are also making a very distinctive kind of films, sort of, which has a huge, which gets huge buyers or takers in the West, especially. And anyway, so I remember watching Mohabbati as a kid, and I was very moved by it. Okay, I was really moved by that film, and I remember crying in it. I think I was in sixth grade or seventh grade or something. So I mean, whatever. I really liked watching Shah Rukh Khan and Amitabh Bachchan on screen for the first time, and I think one of the easiest film audiences to please. I think I still remain that, apart from my numerous reviews dissing on films and whatever. I genuinely feel I'm the easiest audience member to please. Anyway, so there are a bunch of things. So I very much like the film, and the film stayed with me. I don't know, for some weird reason, for a few weeks and things like that. I remember, I mean, the snatches of dialogues would come back, songs and all of that. Now, I mean, I think I watched it now a decade and a half later, like a few years ago. So I mean, somewhere in late 2010s. I just thought it was a terrible film. I mean, and then I really started to understand that, uh, what the cluelessness of the film meant, and why there was a lot of tension in my film watching experience. in the early 2000s, where I really gravitated towards, say, somebody like Ram Gopal Verma or whatever. I mean, so I don't know. Have you seen the film Mohabbatein?
Not really. I haven't, but
You
yeah.
have it anyway. So it's you're not losing a lot in life, but it essentially, I mean, you understand that it's a sort of a battle between a liberal India and a conservative India and things like that. But if you
Uh-huh.
watch the film, you really understand that the film is pretty clueless when it comes to things about education, when it comes to things about what conservatism means, what is
Okay.
traditional like ideas, what is modernity, and stuff like that. And Hindi filmmakers have, I mean, time and time again, really struggled with interpreting what education means. I mean, it's a film that's set in an educational. I mean, it's set in a really hallowed school, so to speak, and but it's the setting is a literal palace in the UK. So there are things like that. I mean, and that's just the first bit of discordance that's there. But other than that, yeah, it's a pretty clueless film, and I just remember feeling really bad for my teenage self, thinking that, wow, was this the film that he liked? So I'm sure if I sort of dig into my past, I'll find a few of them as well. I mean, an opposite example would be something like Chuck Day. I saw the film and I did
Oh,
not like it at all. And I remember watching it because then by then I had come to college and all of that, and I was sort of a rebel without a cause, a rebel without a cause, whatever. I saw it later and I thought that, okay, this is a good standard commercial filmmaking, and this is very well done, even though this is standard mainstream fare. It does not really insult you. It plays to the gallery, but it plays to the gallery well and things like that. I'm sure there are many examples if I sort of think about them.
quite interesting. So the next question is in the history of Indian parallel cinema, if you have a choice to go back in the past and view a premiere of a movie again, which would you choose?
I think that would be a 1984 film called Party. It's a film directed by Govind Nilhani. Uh,
Okay.
have you seen it? I highly recommend if you haven't.
Oh, definitely. Oh,
You have watched the film, right?
I haven't.
Oh, you
So
haven't? Okay, okay. You
I'll,
should definitely watch it. It's a very nice film. It's a 1984 film. I think it's Govind Nalani's second film. His
Mhm.
first, Art Satya, was a huge hit,
Right.
and he sort of that really helped him to get good funding for this film. And so, it's essentially, this film, as it's called, it's about a party. It's set in a party, a house party. It
Mhm.
unfolds over the course of an evening, and it's a really smart film that is also very politically alive. It has a, a few fascinating takes on the callousness, the vacuity, and the utter banality of the Indian elites, which is, I mean, you can say, the writers, the poets, the journalists. It's these are people who are talking about, I mean, their accomplishments and their lives in these glowing terms,
Mhm.
but slowly you start to understand that these people are really so hollow, and how they're sort of um, uh, them attempting to hold on to any kind of power is so desperate. And then it's also cross cut in between with the story of this guy, I think, who was part of these artistic and literary circles, who moved away from them to sort of live with the tribals in a village in some part of the country. And that guy's played by Nasruddin Shah. And I really like that film because it is, I mean, like many great pieces of cinema, it is just very attentive to human nature, its failings, its eccentricities, its what makes people stand out, how they sort of subtly try to assert power and things like that. And it's just I mean, apart from all of that, it's a very entertaining film, and it's a film that is very relevant to our country and our society right now. I think that's definitely a film I would love to watch in a big screen, possibly in a packed cinema theater. And given that I live in Delhi, perhaps with a theater filled with South Delhi elites, I think that would be quite nice.
Right. Yeah, like so what I can gauge from how you have described the movie, I think it's an excellent character study, uh,
Yeah,
per se, in terms of the culture. Nice. So up
You should.
next, yeah.
Yeah, sorry. I mean, I'm just digressing. You should definitely watch it because you'll also get an understanding of the kind of the things people were interested in, or a certain kind of Indians were interested in, or how their lives were in the early 80s. Given that that's
Uh-huh.
when the film is set, and I mean, yeah, I think it's a film that would probably resonate with you quite a bit. Anyway.
Nice. So up next, the next chapter that we have is facing the world as a critic. So, what are the extensive number of variables involved in terms of in terms of the changing approaches from publication to publication, and how do you negotiate your voice with that of a publications?
I mean, the variables are not as pronounced. I
Okay.
mean, sorry. So the variables change essentially depending on the kind of piece that you're doing. All right.
Okay.
Now, is it a review? Is it a standard film review or a web series review? Is it an opinion piece? Or is it a deeply reported piece? Or is it even like a smaller, condensed 1,000 or 1,200 word piece of reportage? So now, I mean, and essentially these are the guidelines, or these are the formats, different formats that you will sort of run into as a critic or as a features writer. So I mean, if it's a film review or a review of a series, then I mean, you know what to expect or what to do. I mean, you watch a film, you react to your feelings, you back them up with reasons and things like that, and you go about writing a piece. Now, if it's an opinion piece based upon on something, like say you are writing a piece on nationalism, say you're writing a piece on, I don't know, how Hindi films have historically dealt with the caste system or things like that. And it could be anything, right? So then it's sort of then it again depends on how big a piece you are writing. Is it an 800 word piece? Is it a 4,000 word piece? Is it an essay? Is it, how deep do you want to get it? How go into how do you sort of want to set up the context and things like that? So as you can sort of understand, or if there's a normal reported piece, say, I don't know, the impact of censorship in the OTT platforms and things like that. Then you know that you have to speak to a few individuals. You know
Right.
that you have to speak to a filmmaker, a screenwriter, perhaps somebody from the censor board as well, perhaps somebody from the IMB ministry and things like that to sort of understand there. Now, or if it's something else, which is my favorite mode of journalism, along with film criticism, is that you are writing a deeply reported research piece on real individuals. In that case, you sort of, I mean, you think about a story idea, you pitch that to a publication house. Once that gets approved, you do your research. Apart from the preliminary research that you had done, you go meet people. Then it becomes documentary filmmaking. You go meet people. If it's one person, then it's fine. If there are more than one people, then sure, you go meet them. Then you sort of start following them. Now, that also depends on the scope of your story. It could last anywhere from one day to a few years or a few weeks or a month or two, things like that. Then again, depending on how big the piece is, what exactly you are trying to achieve. So, I mean, the format of a piece really dictates your approach to it, dictates your research methodology, dictates your sort of how you will think, and ultimately, of course, write the piece. So that's how it varies. I think it's not a lot. It's a fairly standard juggling of among mediums, I would say.
Okay. So, actually, there's this one question wherein have you ever been in a situation where you have an opposing idea with what the editor wants or something like that?
I Yeah. So I mean, I wouldn't know about it as much because I do not get to know my editor's
Mhm.
idea. So, I mean, there are two reasons for it, primary reasons. A, I'm one of the first people in the country to watch the film because more often than not, critics get screeners from Netflix, Amazon, and things like that.
Mhm.
Second, before COVID, we used to have press screenings literally a day before the film released. So, 99% of the cases, my editor has not seen the film, or any editor from any publishing house for that matter. I mean, the fact that this is there in the film and you agreed with it or not, or whether you liked it or not, and things like that, a, anyway, they're so personal, but b, it's I don't know, it's something that only you are privy to. So And it's not as if my editor tells me that, okay, you're going to watch this film, or any editor, I think, would tell you that, okay, that's how you have to watch this film, because that really defeats the very purpose of a review, right?
Definitely.
I mean, a review is such a personal expression of somebody's feelings, or somebody reacting to a film in a very intimate and a very unique fashion. So that itself automatically take cares of disagreement or not, because that's really not the point. I mean, the point is, I am giving you hopefully my considered opinion, and backing it up with enough reasons so that you see my point of view. At times, I mean, my editor can tell me that that this sentence isn't right, or this isn't, I mean, this piece isn't flowing well, or if there's something factual and things like that. But mostly it's there's no agenda as such, so there's no question or disagreement as such as well in these cases.
Uh-huh. Okay. Cool. And okay, so next question is, could you give an example or some insight into the kind of relationships you get to have as a reputable critic?
Uh, no relationships. In fact, I'm somebody who does not want to know filmmakers, who does not
Uh-huh.
want to know screenwriters, who does not want to know, like, whatever. I mean, that was one of the reasons I moved from Bombay to Delhi around almost nearly 3 years ago, because I sort of wanted to stay away. I mean, there were other reasons as well, but this was also was one of them. Was that I literally wanted to be away from the hub of production, and from the hub of where a lot of people, filmmakers, film technicians, actors, and the likes live. Also because I am primarily here to make films. Sorry, to comment on films.
Uh,
It's and these circles are often. I mean, the chances of them overlapping are quite huge, right? I mean, Bombay Film Circle isn't as big as it looks like. And I think that's true for most sort of ecosystems. So there's a good chance that, I mean, you get to become close friends with, say, a director or a screenwriter or an editor or whatever, and nothing wrong in that. I mean, it's really not unconceivable to think that a film critic and a screenwriter, or a film critic and a filmmaker can be really good friends, just because, I mean, the ambit of overlaps is so huge, right? I mean, cinema
yeah.
itself. So, but then what do you do? I mean, if you're chilling with a filmmaker one evening, and a few days later you have to review his or her film, and you pan it, then what happens? And it won't be an easy review to write, for sure, right? Even if it's a good film, or even if it's a bad film, or if it's a film that lies somewhere in middle. So I mean, I am very conscious about this thing, and there are two more things to it. I often see people who use film criticism as a stepping stone or as a ladder to do something else in cinema. That as a film critic, okay, you approach this world, or you enter this world because you think that, acha, I'll be friends with this filmmaker. I'll get to know this producer. I'll get to, that typical Bombay hustle shtick. I don't like that at all, and I'll be very honest about it. I'm not a fan. I'm not saying you can't do it. I mean, Michael Haneke was a film
Mhm.
critic. He started making films at the age of 47 or something. So I'm definitely not saying that. And that as a film critic, you can't be whatever. Sorry. But the examples of people sort of using film criticism as a ladder to bigger, better things is something that doesn't really sit well with me, because I honestly think that film criticism is a separate world in itself, and it should not be I'm being very idealist right now, but it should not be used or monetized in a way that seems
Right.
that, okay, film criticism was a pit stop and your ultimate destination is something else. I think film criticism can be in and itself complete, can be complete in itself. That said, I have met, I mean, people from the industry and all of that. I mean, not a lot, but so it's. I mean, it's good when those conversations happen and things like that. But there's always and just by the very virtue of me living in Delhi, which is literally far away
Mhm.
from Bombay, those conversations and interactions have reduced. Of course, there's Twitter now and things like that. But I've always this thing. I've always maintained that I want to be a friend of films. I don't want to be a friend of filmmakers. and
Right.
which does not mean that there is any hostility. Definitely there's not. I mean, you have a lot of respect for people who make films, who are involved in making films in any capacity, irrespective of their talent or irrespective of the kinds of films they make, because
Mm.
a, creating anything is tough, b, creating films is very tough, again irrespective of the talent of the film. So it's nothing about that, but it's just about my own vulnerability and frailty as an individual, where I think that I won't be able to maintain my own objectivity, which again is a fraught thing in itself, but as much of an objectivity as you may want to have as a critic. So I sort of try to maintain my distance.
Right, yeah, it's an excellent ethical stance, I would say. And also, I feel like it becomes a means to an end scenario, kind
It,
of,
it
like for a
definitely
lot of
does.
people. Yeah.
It definitely does. And that said, though, I do have plans of meeting different kinds of film professionals in future to sort of understand their thought process, understand how they approach their craft, understand what do they consider uh, good craftsmanship in their respective departments, being sound mixing, sound design, editing, coloring a film, shooting a film, and things like that, or directing or writing a film, and there are several other components.
Uh,
So I have a lot of interest in that, but I don't but those meetings would be, and hopefully people agree to meet me, would be as perhaps an interview, or as perhaps somebody that something that's it's a formal thing, you know.
to get
I
closer
At
to
least as of
cinema.
now,
Right.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Being very forthcoming about the intent of that conversation itself, that I
Uh,
want to sort of get into your heads a bit, and things like that. So I mean, I think that there's an immense scope for sort of overlaps and things like that, and for somebody as serious as me myself, but which I definitely want to pursue in future. But apart from that, not a lot. I mean, but you never know. You really can't plan uh, these things anyway. So
right. So yeah, next question is, as a person who has written a lot on documentaries, how do you tackle writing stylish reviews on films that strive to be matter of fact?
uh, I think there is no thought process behind this as such. There's no sort of at least for me, of course, there is no bulb going in my head which says that, okay, this is a sort of quote unquote a dry documentary, or as you said, a matter of
Uh-huh.
fact documentary, or a very realistic film, whether it's even a fictional feature, and I think just because I think as a critic, you have to see so many films, or so many, I mean, films, web series across different formats, documentaries, fictional features, and things like that. I think what you are ultimately responding to is your own feelings. I mean, so I think that I don't think I think consciously about. Or if that's a point of bother, that all right, this film was so matter of fact, and it was so, just cutting it right to the point. How
Uh-huh.
should I make my own piece more interesting? I think uh, what you are writing and what you are thinking and how you are approaching the medium, both as a viewer and as a writer, I
Mm.
think after a point, or at least that's how the case has been with me, it starts to develop a life of its own, which is separate from the film, because when you are writing a review, or even if you're writing an essay or writing a narrative piece or something, I mean, you're essentially creating something. And I think that's where I have a lot of frustration, because a lot of people don't think that film criticism is art, or they don't really value film criticism. They think that अच्छा ठीक है, ये तो it's just a review, इसमें क्या है मतलब, it's anyway so fundamentally parasitic, because it is not an original piece of art anyway. It is leeching off from something else, in this case a film. And so what is there to it and all of that? I mean, I'm of course very biased here, but I definitely disagree with that sort of summation and dismissal of film criticism. I honestly feel that it is a piece that stands apart from the film itself. I mean, you
Uh-huh.
can very much I mean, you can do different things with it. You can tell your own story, like, in 800 words, and not your own. By that, I don't mean your own life story, but the story that you want to tell as this thing, as a critic. Of course, deriving energy and mileage and all of that, and of course, thoughts and themes from the film. But it can be your own thing. It can be your invitation into your own world, and things like that. So I think then slowly you sort of start to develop your own voice. Because also the thing with criticism is that, at least, I mean, before COVID, we did not have a lot of time to write a piece. I mean, often there would be times when there is no pressure. You watch a film on a Friday morning, and you have to turn in a piece in a few hours. So then I mean, you can't really think about how beautiful your sentences are. You can't really think about the music of your piece, or you just need to turn it in. I mean, but that of course does not mean that a review has to be sloppy or lazily written. And the problem with Indian film criticism for a really long time was the fact that often the reviews were as sloppy or even worse than the films that they were purportedly critiquing, right? So you don't want to be that guy. I mean, if you so anyway, so I mean, slowly you develop your voice. You understand that, okay, no matter what the film is, or no matter how your feelings about the films are, your piece has to sound interesting. It has to compel the reader to move from one sentence to the next. It has to be, I mean, sort of be really alive in that sense. So then you sort of get into that pattern. There are many times where you definitely don't hit the sweet spot, and your piece is also all over the way. As I said, sometimes worse than the film. But I think the endeavor is always of sounding really not just in tune with the film, but also being compelling on its own. That even if a person is not interested. So recently, I saw this documentary called "I Am Greta." It's a profile of the environmentalist Greta Thunberg.
Right.
Now, while I was writing the documentary, I mean, the review, I did not have a conscious bulb going, like I didn't have a bulb going in my head that, okay, this is a documentary about an environmental activist and all that. I have to really make it sound interesting even to people who are not interested in the subject. But that has to be the intent at all times, because you see all kinds of films, you see all kinds of characters, stories, themes on screen. Your point is always, as a critic, remains that a person who has a no interest in the film, b no interest in the subject, see no interest in you, will still be compelled to sort of read the piece. It's very difficult to do. I don't think I've been able to do it a lot. But that's always the intent, that to not waste the reader's time. I think that's really important.
Right. That's a great, like, it's an awesome way to transition into our next chapter, which is the writing process. So, can we get a short glimpse of your notes or train of thought after you watch a movie?
It's My thoughts are, I mean, literally all over the place. It's interesting you asked me this question, because it's only recently that I started to take notes in longhand. Initially,
Oh,
for I mean, when I started to watch films as a critic, I would take notes in longhand. I think that continued till 2017. I would often lug a biggish register or notebook to the press shows and all of that, and I would be scribbling in the dark. And often, I mean, my sentences would just slant diagonally downwards, and one page would have four sentences, one going this way, the other going this way, because I would be very conscious that I don't want to overwrite my sentences and things like that. So it was just a whole lot of mess. Then I for that reason, then I moved to taking notes on my phone. But taking notes on the phone is tricky, because you are literally looking down while taking notes, and when the film is going on, right? So you are constantly missing uh, a few seconds of, I mean, visual and sound. And if you're taking notes a lot, that tends to happen quite a bit. But during COVID, I sort of got back, I think in the last few months, I got back to taking notes longhand, because you're watching a film on a desk. You can watch it in a decently illuminated setup so that you don't have to whatever. But I can actually. Do you want some? So I mean, my notes are essentially stuff such as uh, it's it's a snapshot of my brain. In fact, what I'm thinking, what I'm feeling. If there's an important line of dialogue that struck me, then I write it down. That is really important for me because if I want to quote something, I don't want to get the lines of the screenwriter or the dialogue writer wrong.
Uh-huh.
I think that's a big insult to them. I mean, especially somebody who's a writer myself, although of a different kind. So I think I'm very particular with that. It has a lot to do with recording my feelings, how I was feeling while watching the film. Oh, this is crap. Oh, this is terrific. Or whatever. I mean, not as vague, but you're constantly. I mean, if you see a good cut, you write about it. If you see some good recurring theme that's happening, you write about that. So anything that catches your attention, if you want, I can read a few scraps of notes if I find.
That would
If is that something you are looking for, or is this fine?
that would help. Yes, definitely.
I okay, so I think I found something. This is for a suitable boy. It's
Uh-huh.
just
Okay.
it's pretty random. I'll just read three of strong sitar strains. It's largely insipid and doesn't hold you down.
Uh-huh.
Lata doesn't have a screen presence. The
Uh-huh.
English sounds so inauthentic. Uh, Varis also speaks English. What the fuck? What is the primary audience of this piece? Flower falling off, hilarious. Whatever. Anyway, it could just be anything. I think it's. I think most of the times I delete my because when I used to take notes on my phone, I afterwards I would delete my Google Drafts just because it would clog a lot of space and all of that. I just somehow had. I mean, I quickly looked up. I had somehow saved the notes file for a suitable boy. I should have ideally retained them because it's such a interesting way to sort of sometimes just
That.
I mean see how your brain is literally responding to a film
Uh-huh.
or a piece of web series or something. It's but I find that process really helpful because I don't rely on my memory at all. My memory is terrible. So
Right, right.
taking notes
And
helps
yeah,
a
I
lot.
mean, I guess it's your instinctive character on paper in terms of
Yeah, absolutely.
movie. Okay. So, have you tackled with the fear of running out of ideas to write about or going blank when you watch a movie? And if so, how do you treat such phases or give suggestions to someone with this problem?
I mean, the fear of running ideas out or the fear of blank page all the time. I remember tweeting about it something
Uh,
of a few weeks ago, wherein I mean, there have been many films. So I lived in Bombay from 2015 to 18. So I would usually watch a press show in Andheri, and then I would just catch an auto to go back to my home, which was in Andheri itself. It used to be a 10 or a 15-minute auto ride or something. And
oh,
I remember many times thinking that man, this is a film I will not be able to write a review of. It's just not possible. I will not be able to write even a single word.
uh,
How do I do it? And I know it sounds funny now, and it's important. I told you about the Bombay phase because this is the year which was I think 2016 or something, 2016 or 2017. It's probably my third year of professional film criticism and all of that. So not very second year, second to third year, you can probably say. Not a whole lot has happened. So I was also very new to the process of writing, very new to the process of writing. I mean, analyzing cinema in a professional capacity and things like that. And I remember I used to think about it all the time. I mean, and there were many films for which I thought that okay, it is just not possible, and I would just procrastinate, and just I mean, whatever. So that has happened a lot, but there is this one thing that has always helped me. It has been my magic wand, which was your previous question. I take a look at my notes, and then I mean, this is my point where nothing has come to me, where I'm about to write an email to my editor that I'm so sorry, please fire me. I'm a fuck all critic. I'm just terrible, and I'm so sorry for this. You know, but of course, you also know that you won't do it. You can't do it, and you should not do it. And it's also this. quasi-comical set piece that's running in your head, you are also finding the whole process really silly, but also very agonizing at the same time, knowing very well that you will write this. Now the question is how, because you've thought about everything. And I'm a huge first sentence person. If And in that regard, I don't think I'm pretty different from a lot of film critics or a lot of essayists or a lot of different kinds of writers as well. Uh, if the first sentence comes to me, the piece automatically is in my head. I know it. I don't sit and structure my piece. I don't know how other critics go about, but I don't sit and structure that. Acha, now I'll write about this, I'll write about that, I'll write about whatever. The first sentence has to come, and then I sort of know my overall feelings and sort of go about it. In some longer pieces, I sometimes give myself some structural pointers that, okay, write about X in the whatever paragraph, now write about whatever. But that doesn't happen a lot. But whenever I've gotten stuck, I take a look at my notes, and it just feels very reassuring, because it feels like you are taking a little walk down this I don't know, boulevard of your feelings.
Right.
That how your mind, your heart, whatever, how you yourself were responding to this film. What did that response mean? Was it a good response? Was it a bad response? Was it a bored, indifferent response? What in the film struck you the most? Because those are the things that are there on the paper, for better or worse. And that often, gives a way out, because something has to. That sort of feeling of insecurity and apprehension and all of that has reduced over the years. But yeah, it keeps cropping up that, oh, I just don't know how to tackle this review, and it can literally come up day after when I have to write another review. You never know. It's just something that's just so there. It's such an essential part of the process.
Uh, so you backtrack from your feelings back to what the movie is and sort of. Uh,
At times, yeah, when I'm definitely lost, because you can't answer, you can't ask somebody, right? This is not an engineering project. You can't. No, there is no one answer. All the answers, solutions, questions, confusions lie within you. So and writing, before being a literal outward process, it's a pretty inward process, wherein it's a constant tussle between the thoughts in your mind and the words on the page, and you, as a writer, you're constantly trying to minimize the gap. So I think reading my notes back to me puts at least some thought in my head, because I think a lot of confusion arises when you just don't have anything here, and if you don't have anything in your head, what will you even write about? So yeah.
right, right, right. And speaking of the self and intrinsic processes, how has writing helped your way of living life? And like in my view, you're very vibrant and energetic. So has your intellectual development of thought about cinema helped you in your personality? And if so, how?
First of all, I don't consider myself vibrant and energetic at all. I think if you ask my friends in real life, they will definitely attest to that. I am a pretty lazy, whatever. Anyway, let's not go there. But it's very interesting. Yeah, when you're asking me about sort of like this intersection between a writer's life and a writer's life. So for me, I returned to India in the summer of 2013. Now, before, when I was in the US working as an engineer and all of that, my life was pretty removed from a writer's life. I wasn't a writer. It was just a very different life, right? And all of that. And I remember being very, and it's a very comforting lifestyle. There was decent money there. You don't really have to worry about things.
Uh,
So in that respect, it was very nice and easygoing. But I remember having this gnawing sense of a lack, that I'm not doing something that I really care for. I I don't know, what is the point of all of this? Why am I doing? What am I doing? And all of that. So there was that. Now, when I moved to India, I definitely had this sense of uh, this sense of contentment, that I am doing what I enjoy doing and all of that. But then, as things would have happened, of I mean, to cut a long story short, something happened, a bunch of things happened, and I fell into this spiral and a rabbit hole of massive depression. And it was terrible. And that lasted, I mean, it still lasts till late, but it was very intense during the years, late 2014 till 17 or 18. For a large part, I didn't even know I was depressed. Things like that. Then I started seeing a therapist. I think that was late 2016 and all of that. So it's I mean, the way I see my life unfold, it's a very interesting juxtaposition, because when I did not have cinema, I was happy, but I was unhappy that I wanted cinema in my life. When I got cinema, then I became unhappy, or I mean, because of different reasons, cinema did not have any role to play in that. But so yeah, I mean, it's been all up and down, I would say. But being a writer has definitely, I mean, helped, I would say, because I remember, uh, perhaps, I mean, again, I don't know your relationship with depression and things like that, but and it affects different people in different ways. But for me, one of the biggest things was that it had robbed me of any feeling at all. Now, it was very weird, because and the only feeling that I could get was watching characters, people, stories on screen. Now it's a weird feeling that you do not feel as a person in your ordinary life, because I mean it just you can't feel things. But while you're watching a film, uh, you are at times moved to tears. You are laughing. You are really in it. And what is life if you can't feel? So I am massively thankful to cinema for that. I mean, at times writing can also be a very abusive process, because it's not easy. I don't find writing easy at all. I think it's very tormenting and agonizing at times, not to say deeply frustrating. But it has also allowed me, given me much more than it has sort of pricked me. So I think that has been something that I really cherish, about writing, and in a way that is, yeah, that has sort of helped me evolve in some way, because you are also seeing different kinds of people on screen. You're seeing the very the very evolution of human thought, things like that. Those things are deeply profound, and they are very uplifting. So yeah, I mean, it's a whole mixed bag, I would say. But I think I'm very, very, very grateful to cinema in so many ways. Definitely over the last few years, I would say. Yeah.
Right. So the next question is, what do you suggest aspiring film critics in this era of massive overflow of information from all formats?
I mean, I don't know whether I'm even, I don't know, qualified enough, or I should be giving any advices. But if there's anything that I would like to tell them or suggest them, is that, I mean, and it's not even original advice. It's just so standard. Is that just be original? I mean, be
Okay.
yourself. I think what's really important is that when I mean, as you said, we are inundated with information, with opinions, with hot takes, with disagreements, with approvals, with everything, right? I mean, it's a saturation of saturation that social media has sort of, and it's not even something new. We've been talking about the information fatigue for years now. Anyway, so in that scenario, if you're writing on a film, say if you're writing on, I mean, a biggish film, let's say you're writing on a Hollywood film, it's a film that would have thousands and thousands and thousands of pieces on it, even reviews. Let's say there would be bloggers who would be writing it, not just from America, but from the UK, but from India, and from all parts of the world. There would be film critics writing about it, not just in the US or the UK, but also in India, also in France, also in other countries. There would be takes from the film festivals. There would be all kinds of things, right? Now, in that case, how do you stand out? I mean, and
Right.
the only way you can stand out is just by being yourself, and being very, very honest to yourself. I think that the main intent of a piece, or I would like to argue that the main intent of film criticism itself, is that you produce a piece that only you can. because you watching a film is first and foremost a very personal experience. It's an experience that only you went through, because everybody goes to watch a same film, but all of us come back with a different film, right? That's the very nature of audience engagement. That's how humans are hardwired to respond to things, and cinema being, I mean, such a personal, subjective medium and all of that, it affects you uniquely. So I think the only way to stand out is to not really adhere to what is a template sort of film writing, or
Hmm.
what can I do that it will subscribe to the standard norms of film criticism. So, ठीक है, I'll write a few lines about the craft. I'll write a line or a paragraph or two about the acting. I'll write a paragraph about story. I'll write a paragraph about the theme and things like that. It's a very tick check boxy style of film reviewing. Where you're not being yourself, and writing about the film in a cold, distinct manner. That okay, as if writing like an informed person. A lot of these kind of pieces can suffer from a lot of weightiness, from a lot of seriousness, a lot of formality, so to speak.
Uh-huh.
Um uh, but I think the kinds of pieces that stand out are the pieces that are very personal to the critic involved. That gives us a peek into how they look at the world, how they look at cinema, how they look at the craft of filmmaking, how they look at different things. In short, just do something only you could have done, because you are, of course, irreplaceable, right? Anything else can just be uh, if there's something that looks like an assembly line of work, then that's the kind of approach that one should definitely try to avoid as much as possible.
Right, right, right. Yeah, and like in agreement to what you said, I think the times have paradoxically made us not only they have made us frail and fragile, but they have also made us more individualistic in terms of our own voice. So yeah. So yeah, let's move on to the final chapter. So this question, of course, like we can choose to not include it in the main interview. Uh, do you have a list of characters in all of cinema who interest you and why?
Quite a bit, but the answer to this question is, I mean, if you ask me this question probably tomorrow morning, I may give you a different list. If you ask me
Okay.
the same question tomorrow evening, I'll give you a completely different list. At
Uh-huh.
this point of time, I can definitely sort of share a few characters that have sort of stayed with me, that fascinate me to the extent that I would love to meet these folks. So I mean, right off the bat, I would say the main character from I, Daniel Blake. Uh, it's this beautiful film by Ken Loach. It's about this. He's played by Dave Johns. It's this guy who is really trying to. I mean, really struggling with the modern Britain society. I mean, he's somebody who is, I think, on the welfare. He's trying to, I mean, just running pillar to post, struggling even to just get the basic things in life, and how sort of the modern capitalist and the modern state itself has uh, what do you call it, delegitimized their own citizens. And it's a beautifully performed role with a lot of with a lot of gut, so with a lot of, I mean, flair and a lot of anger. It's a fantastic role. So yeah, I mean, that's one character that I'm quite fascinated by. Second is, I would say, Anton Sugar from No Country for Old Men. Just another one of those really standard batshit insane people. I mean, evil characters. But he's again somebody who has his own twisted moral code, but a moral code still. So I think it's just this sense of, I mean, deadly impassivity to things that is just so fascinating about that guy. Then I would say this main character from an Iranian documentary, Close Up. This guy called Hossein Shabzian. He's this guy who, and this docu fiction is based on a real story. Some parts are staged from the camera, but the essence of the story is true. So, so I think Shabian happens to be somebody who is, Hussain happens to be somebody who is a big fan of Iranian filmmaker Mohsen Makhmalbaf, and he kind of cons his way into a family who thinks that he's Makhmalbaf, and then that's where the story this thing it's a beautiful exploration of identity, about cinephilia itself, what sort of admiration or imitation can do to a person, what are the limits of it, and things like that. Just a fascinating character. Then I would say this the patriarch from the Corrida film, Shoplifters. Just another guy who I thought was, his name is Osamu. I think he's played by Lily Frank in the film. Another, just this guy was very fascinating, just because the story itself is fascinating, asking questions about what is a family, what constitutes a family, what are its definitions and limitations and things like that, and the way this guy goes about constructing a family which was not a family. I thought that was pretty interesting. Final, I would say, there's this Greek film called Pity. I think it released in 2018 or something. It's about this guy. This film is about, as the title suggests, this film is about pity. It's about a guy who he's a lawyer. I think his wife is in coma, and a lot of people come to his house. So when they meet him, they express their condolences, and they really shower pity on him, and they feel bad about him. And this guy, he realizes that he gets addicted to it, and the more people do it, the more he likes it. And it has just become this sense of I don't know, this weird kind of addiction that he begins to spiral into. And then one day his wife gets better and she comes back,
Uh,
and this guy does not, he flips. He does not know what to do with his life. And he starts lying about her. He starts saying that, oh, she's still sick, she's still unconscious, she's still XYZ, whatever. But it's a matter of time that people understand that he's lying and all of that. He stops getting pity, and that really unsettles him. Just a brilliant character. I don't quite like the end of this film, but I absolutely love the 80 or 85% of this film, and just fascinatingly written character. I mean, so yeah, I think these are some of the few individuals I would definitely like to meet, or know about or talk to or something like that. I'm pretty sure that this list is huge, as any
right.
cinephile, including you, would attest, right?
Mhm.
There's just Travis Bickle, and there's just so many. It's you can go on and on. So.
Right, I understand. So finally, if you're in a room with someone who doesn't watch or know cinema at all, and as a critic, you want to tell them why cinema is an important part of life for you, what would you say?
I would tell that person just one line, literally one line.
Uh-huh.
Cinema, cinema lets me travel and meet people. Now, who will have a problem with that? I think it takes a special kind of a person who would object to. Oh man, that just sounds terrible. I mean, who likes going to new places, or who? I mean, sure, meeting new people can be a different thing, but I
Right.
mean, just the first part of that pitch, I don't know. It just lets you, I mean, soak different experiences, different customs, cultures, languages, people, conflicts. I mean, the list is endless. I think it's one of the most beautiful forms of travel ever, and I mean, it's a very good question, and it's a good end to a conversation. But I would also say something. Yeah, this hadn't really struck me. This line of thought,
Uh-huh.
that how do people react to or connect with cinema and all of that. I mean, sure, I'm a critic. You are somebody who's studying in a film school and all of that. So we do have a formal connection with cinema. It's almost a professional relationship that both of
Right.
us share. So of course, our investment and our interest in cinema has different routes, but I definitely would say from other people. But I would definitely say that pandemic has at least made people reconsider their relationship with cinema or with the visual arts and things like that. Because when people were locked for, I mean, it's been 10 months and counting, and got like, it could be a few more months, if not more than that we are in this situation. Uh, so many people turned into, I mean, OTT platforms just to, I mean, it was either the fear, no, not the fear, it was either the, I mean, they just got fed up with the TDM, they were bored, they were feeling, I don't know, just cooped up, annoyed, frustrated, clueless, whatever. I think they would have really appreciated. And cinema is also, I mean, a companion. Somebody's
Right.
literally talking to you, even if they're talking
Uh-huh.
among themselves. You hear sounds, you see things, shit is happening. It's not a passive presence. It responds. It urges you to respond to it in some form or the other, and it's a presence. It's such a prominent presence. So I think, because I know of a few individuals and all of that. I mean, people in their 50s and 60s and all of that, who, I mean, did not have a really profound or an intimate relationship with cinema, but pandemic really forced them to, because they really did not have an option. I mean, just think of the kinds of things you can or could do within the confines of your house. Watching a film or watching a web series would be on, like, one of the top things in that list for many people. Sure, I mean, you can listen to music, you can read a book, you can do a bunch of things, right? But watching cinema is something that is, I don't think I need a pitch to anybody who's not in cinema. I think most people who have endured the lockdown over the last 10 plus months, I think they would have really come to terms with their own relationship with cinema. I think, which is great. Just, uh, I mean, it's weird that that's come about in something as unfortunate as the pandemic, but I think people have begun to appreciate what cinema is and what it can really do to
Right. Yeah. And I mean, of course, you know about the VR1 Digital Film Festival that happened,
you.
right?
Yes.
It was
Yeah.
like opening up film festival cinema on YouTube. And I saw so many comments of people from all over the world commenting on the idea that they'd never seen such cinema before. And it's just
Great.
a different experience. So, yeah, that's
Ah,
also part of the inspiration I got to start the Suave Critic.
oh, that's great.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, that just, it just tells you that, there are just so many people who are interested in perhaps the things that you are interested in. It's just that
Uh-huh.
they have not been given the opportunity to do so. I can definitely go back to my life and think, say that, I was somebody who was just invested in a certain kind of cinema, but when I started to see different sort of films, I began to wonder that, oh, this is also filmmaking. Oh, this is how cinema can also be. So I'm pretty sure there are many, many people like that in across different parts of the world, and it's just great when you see something that connects with you and that opens and it's something in you. I mean,
Yeah.
so yeah.
Sometimes it's just unexplainable, but it's there.
Absolutely, absolutely, and you don't know why certain things connect with you, right? It could be music, it could be painting, it could be
Mhm.
plays, it could be cinema, literature, whatever. And I think it's beautiful when you find your thing, or anybody finds their own jam, for the lack of a better word. I think it's just beautiful.
Right. Thanks, Tanul, for connecting with me and sort of. It's been such an insightful interview, and I hope, of course, for our viewers, it's the same. But it was great to have a conversation with you.
Pleasure. Thank you for having me here.